I believe we are live, Jeff.
We're live. It's our first live stream.
Yes, it's our first live stream. We're building in public, and we should be currently broadcasting to AttorneySync's Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube channel. I was hoping to put X on there, but apparently I need a premium subscription for X to do this. So
Elon needs that money.
Musk is trying to extract more value from the platform. But why don't we take a minute, since this is our first live here, we will introduce ourselves. So I am Guy Sakalakis, one of the co-founders of AttorneySync, and I'm joined today by my business partner and good friend, Jeff Furman, who is also a co-founder of AttorneySync.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Jeff. And, you know, as I said, it's our first live stream for AttorneySync. We're going to start testing this out, so bear with us if there's some proverbial digital dust. But I wanted to just kind of kick off the conversation. I posted this earlier on LinkedIn, so people that are connected to me will know. But this amazing book, Analog Marketing in a Digital World, and I really love the subtitle here, A Blueprint for Attorneys to Dominate Local Markets by Being Human. And, you know, Jay sent me this manuscript for this book when he was writing it, which, you know, thanks for sending it. And as I read it, I felt like, gosh, this is exactly what we are trying to do at AttorneySync, which is to meet clients where they are in supporting them in their analog marketing efforts. And, you know, I posted on LinkedIn this excerpt from chapter 20. And basically, Jay shares, you know, look, I paid these marketing companies, SEO vendors, PPC people, and they're all different, and none of them are talking to each other, and none of them are informed about what I'm doing offline, like none of my community stuff, none of my speaking engagements. And gosh, that just resonates so much. I mean, we talk to lawyers all the time when we pop open the hood and we look at reports, and it's just so apparent that different vendors are managing different stuff, and as a result of that, it's not working as well as it should be.
Left hand isn't talking to the right.
Right. And, you know, and we know this, right? Because we see it. We see the impact of offline media on performance. We see the research that we've done with near media bears this out, that legal service, we think about it, and marketers like us, this is what we sell lawyers, right? It's a last click direct response PPC campaign, pay-per-click.
Very linear path. They look for X, then they contacted.
Exactly. Someone does a search for divorce lawyer near me. They're running a campaign for that keyword on Google, ad comes up, click, call, hire, everything works in a nice linear fashion. And look, I'll be the first to admit, there are legal segments of the legal services consumer market that hire lawyers just like that.
Sure.
We see it in our data, we see it in the reports. I think one thing that I've been talking about also that you're probably sick of hearing, Jeff, is this idea of diversification. If you're all in on that single non-brand last click direct response Google ad channel, search ads, guess what? Cost per acquisition is going up through the roof.
And will continue to do so as more and more firms are spending more to fight over what is a smaller pool of cases.
That's right. And not to mention that we've talked about many times, private equities coming into this space.
Yep.
And what does that mean? That means that they are going to be running very lean, sophisticated data to be able to maximize a cost per client that, frankly, a lot of firms just can't compete with because they're not doing the volume, they don't have the infrastructure, the technology, yada, yada, yada. And so
what's a firm to do in this kind of landscape and situation?
Well, you know, I talked about this. I'll give a shout to the guys at Near Media and the Near Memo. I talked to them about this, but you've got to diversify your marketing strategy. And a big part, Jay talks about this a lot in his book, but I want to specifically focus on this context between offline and online, because we hear so much that it is, you got to make a choice, right? It's like, I'm going, even if you're diversified, you're like, okay, well, I'm diversified, but I'm just doing, even if you put a big umbrella over it and call it digital, you're still missing so much. And again, if it's even worse, where you're just doing digital and you've got multiple vendors managing digital in different ways, they're not talking to each other, the dashboards aren't unified, the consumer journeys aren't being actually tracked, you're gonna make bad decisions. You're going to do attribution, it's gonna be an incomplete picture of attribution. That example I just gave, search, click, call, hire. Unless you're analyzing that at least on the keyword level or the search query level, you're not going to be able to segment between brand and non-brand. You're going to be, your PPC person's going to be like, phone's ringing from PPC, but it's because it's people that are calling you who already know you. So you're paying a premium on clicks for
branded search,
people that already know you, for brand search.
Do you think you find situations where more often where it's just not being tracked at all, right? And so there's no data to be relying upon, or it's being tracked, but the data is it's a garbage in and garbage out situation where, like, the data being tracked is being used, but it's being used in a way that's actually to the detriment of the overall goals here, because we're looking at the wrong data.
I think it's both. I think it's a lot of the firms we talk to have a data scarcity problem, meaning they just don't have enough data to actually draw any meaningful insights from. Many have a data hygiene issue, which is the other part that you're referring to, where it's like, is the data that they do have, which is scarce, actually saying what it purports to say? And sadly, I think the answer is both. And so it's even worse. And this is the thing that drives me nuts, because there are a lot of people in our space that will say stuff like, well, yeah, Guy, we get it, but some data is better than no data. Right. And we hear this a lot in the context recently in the context of like AI rank tracking. Right. It's like, well, we know that it's problematic, but it's something. And I'm like, no, that is not how this works. But let's not focus on that right now. Let's focus on just like your firm marketing data. And so you've got very limited data in a lot of places. And on top of that, you're making decisions that's based on incorrect, garbage data. And then the problem is, and this is why I push back on this folks that say like some data is better than no data, is because the data, the perception of data gives you confidence that you might not have otherwise had. And so you've got this confidence where you're like, oh yeah, the data is telling me this. And it's like, no, it isn't. It's even worse. It's telling you the wrong thing to do. And now you're actively deploying more resources to this marketing channel based on bad data that's actually not driving business the way that you think it is.
You're confidently and aggressively headed in the wrong direction.
That's right. See, at least when you had no data, you might like dip your foot in the pool. You might be like, I don't know. This is a test. This is an experiment. You got bad data. You're like, let's put 100% of my marketing budget into that.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about kind of this offline online merge, so to speak, because a lot of firms thought of these as very separate entities. You mentioned where there's a lack of kind of left hand talking to the right, and when you talk about diversifying and kind of joining these things up, just talk to me kind of a high level of what that looks like for a firm and kind of what you mean when you're saying these things.
Yeah, I mean, look, the obvious place that we talk about this all the time is offline media buying. And so, you talk radios, you talk billboards, there's a bunch of other offline media, but the challenge with that is that, as a lot of firms know, it's expensive. I mean, this is the place at the big firms, the national firms, the soon to be private equity backed firms, that's where they're going to. And so, in my community, the highways are lined with personal injury law firm billboards. Radio waves are packed with that. And so a lot of firms are like, look, I'm not competing in that game. And so what they do is they draw this conclusion like, well, offline is not my thing. And I can point to a bunch of examples, but there are ways to do offline that don't require like that mass spend. Now, I'll give a quick example. Like maybe you have a billboard at your local high school football stadium. It varies by community, but there are some communities where the community rallies around the high school football team. Like everybody, they're Texas, there's, 40, 50,000 people showing up for a high school football game. Everybody in the community is all about it. I'm sure that the funny thing is the media there is probably more expensive as well, but maybe not as expensive as Freeway, but I could be wrong. It could be just as expensive in that context. But the point being is that there are ways to do offline media sponsorships. Now, let's forget about media buying at all. Let's just talk about offline more generally.
Mm-hmm.
Local community events, right? Maybe you have a booth at a local community event, and law firms do this. They do giveaways, they do contests, excuse me. And I think that's a great way to have a presence in your local community, positioning yourself as local to your community. And while you're there, maybe you do something to inspire folks to take a picture or put something on their own social media to share. Maybe there's a contest giveaway. Maybe you're going to partner with a local business to do like we're going to buy you dinner or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff that you're doing in the real world has an impact on digital, even just organically, without any media behind it, without any kind of technical infrastructure. If you do stuff to make people want to share stuff online, your real world stuff, now it goes online. So that's like a no-brainer. And it's not very expensive. And in some ways, it can be as simple as you contact a local restaurant and be like, hey, I'm going to buy a gift card. We're going to do a giveaway. Are you cool with that? Maybe I think there's some groundwork to be laid with like getting approval if you're going to film it or something like that. But
Sure.
Point being is very low investment. And people want to share that stuff. They want to highlight local businesses. They want to share that you're doing good stuff in the community.
I like the way you're talking about it. I think sometimes people get too hyper-focused on the end result of this has to be like lead gen, right? Like I'm getting someone who reaches out. And so they go into these things planning around that. But everything you just said, that's not the point, right? It's more awareness. And I think that dovetails into like, how do you think about tracking these things? How do you think about the types of metrics or goals or the point of what you're doing in the community versus what's my cost per case sign from this specific activity, right? Like,
Totally.
How do you think about that?
Yeah. And, there's a lot of different ways to think about attribution. Kind of the default for me is at least dual source. You've at least got to have quantitative attribution data. That's like the stuff running in the background, clicks, Google Analytics, Search Console data, Google Ads data, call data, all that stuff. That's quantitative. And then qualitative. How'd you hear about us? Who do we thank for the referral? And again, if you're integrating, that's a big buzzword right now. I'm all over this integrated idea. But if you're integrating your offline activities with your digital activities, you're going to see it showing up. So for example, you had a local community event, you're doing the giveaway, then you run a report over, again, like you said, this isn't direct response. This takes time, but a year later, 2 years later, you run reports with qualified prospects. So, wanted leads. These are people that you want to provide services for. Maybe they're not even a client yet, or maybe they didn't choose you for a different reason. And we can talk about that too, but you got wanted leads report. How many are showing up that were subscribed to the contest in the local community? How many are showing up that are that you can attribute in some way directionally to these offline activities? We talk about this on the Lunch Hour Legal Marketing podcast all the time. Podcast metrics aren't great. I'm not going to waste even time talking about them, but here's what's great. How did you hear about us? I listened to the podcast, right? How did you hear about us? I follow you on LinkedIn, stuff like that. And that works we do it ourselves, and it works for lawyers too. But you at least have to have that bare minimum in place to be able to do that.
I like that. And that I still think that focuses on like that, tying it back to actual cases and end outcome. One of the things that we both know well in terms of doing this stuff is that the offline efforts take some time and they need to compound, right? So are there things that you look at or would suggest tracking or thinking about so that like a lawyer or law firm doesn't get in a position where they're like starting, the compounding's happening, but then they stop too early because didn't see it show up yet in the the ROI of this specific case. Things to like be able to get a better sense of those wins and how that's compounding, so that's something that they can actually stick with.
Yeah, all the time. I mean, and this is why, again, when I say diversification, another buzzword, I don't just mean channel. I mean diversification between performance marketing and brand marketing, because again, performance marketing, we'll use Google Ads, LSA, local services ads. You get them up and running. The ads are getting in front of people now, and people are going to start calling now. Guess what? They're expensive. It's a high cost per acquisition. It's a high cost per case. It's a high cost per wanted lead, especially in competitive areas, especially in competitive practice areas. And guess what? Especially for local services ads, you better have a competitive number of reviews, because in order to convert, you've got to be competitive in reviews, both in number and sentiment. There's another thing that came out of the Near Media research. The expectations on legal services consumers about both review sentiment and volume, it's insane.
I think it was 4.9 average and 774 reviews, as kind of like, we call it like the disqualification filter of like, if you don't have that, they're looking at others that have that and then calling them instead. And again, if you're a firm, a lot of the firms, so just a statistic, I think I put this in the email this week, or maybe it might have been a different week, but and just folks that are just getting to know AttorneySync, we do offer free legal marketing tips, insights, news. You can subscribe at our website, AttorneySync.com. Our expertise in your inbox is what we call that. But to the point, statistically speaking, you're at a huge competitive disadvantage from a review standpoint, just on sheer numbers alone, because there are firms that are going to have, they're doing high volume. If you're a smaller boutique law, call it boutique if you want, smaller law firm, you don't serve, you're not scale, maybe you're a solo, maybe you have one or two lawyers at your firm. Even if you're doing great work and you're getting awesome reviews, you're just not serving as many people. And so on a raw review count perspective, you're at a huge competitive disadvantage. Also, breaking news, lawyers are buying fake reviews in mass. And nobody is enforcing anything about it. Google's like, Google puts out, it's like, well, we removed a bunch of fake reviews. It's like they took like 1 grain of sand off the beach. Nice job, Google. State AG's offices, some of them have talked about it, but no, I haven't seen much enforcement. State bars, they've got other fish to fry. They're not built to deal with that. Yeah, they're not properly resourced to be able to enforce that. FTC now, and we've, for years, people have been sending me messages being like, just wait, Guy, this is the year you're going to see someone's going to be made an example of. And I'm like, that was like 2019, that was like it's been going on for like 6 years. So anyway, so point being, again, in the context of like, what can lawyers do with this stuff? You've got to diversify to places that reviews aren't the deciding factor. Now, again, to the point, talking about a diverse marketing mix, there's probably some ads that you should consider running. Like there are ways to do you can do direct response where reviews aren't as big of a deal. Maybe you're going to do paid social ads. Maybe you're going to do some meta ads. Maybe you are going to explore Reddit advertising. These are places where there's, doesn't have search intent, right? These are interruption-based direct response channels. Sorry to interrupt. You're talking about ad or channels or placements that aren't as reliant on the reviews and the review count and the sentiment? Okay. Yeah, I'm saying, I'm trying to think of the firm persona that we're talking about here. Maybe they're doing pretty well, right? Maybe they've been around a while. They've got
a significant number of positive, maybe they got 100 reviews, but they're in a market where there's like, you have to have thousands.
Sure.
They've got some budget. They're like, I got some budget to spend, but LSAs and Google ads are probably not the first place for them to go. And again, I'm thinking about this in the context of maybe 20% of their overall budget's going to performance direct response to try to get some cases in the door now.
Yeah.
But then that other 80% is going to, longer term brand strategies, again, diversified
more like awareness
across
of the firm and what they do and top of mind type of activity.
Yeah. And here's the thing. You've said awareness a couple times, and I get it. I understand why, but I would switch to thinking about it in terms of affinity. And that affinity, when I say affinity, it's like, what are you doing beyond just people, not just being aware of you? It's people like liking what you're doing. And that's why these contests, these giveaways, these partnerships with local businesses, you put ad dollars behind that. It's not just awareness. People like it. And then you can be like, hey, tag a friend to enter them into the contest. Now you've got more engagement on your social posts. Maybe some people think that's kind of, cheating, but truth be told, it works. It's a great way to drive engagement. It's a great way to support local business. People like that stuff anyway.
It's bringing about that kind of community and involvement, and they represent something more than just, I know who they are. That's
right.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm doing direct response. And so guess what happens? If you use brand to drive engagement, you can still show those audiences direct response ads also. And by doing it through something like retargeting, where you're like, okay, you show a thing, you get them back to your website, and then you show them direct response ads through retargeting. Well, guess what? Especially as you grow that list, and you can do it with first party data, where you could actually have like opted in emails. Again, people are going to say, well, you have to grow your list. Like, yeah, you do. But think about that. You're now able to say, look, I want to show direct response ads to people in my local community who are probably already familiar with me. We know that because they subscribe because of the local event, or they clicked through on one of these co-marketing partnerships with a local business, or they signed up for the contest, so they're on the list because they want the local food, which is like, great. Now that list is local. The cost of doing the efficiencies of doing that from a CPM, a cost per 1,000 impressions, or even a cost per click, are way lower. Now, again, I don't want to mislead people. It's not search. It's not bottom of the funnel, non-brand search.
Higher up. Yep.
But direct response can work. It really can. It comes to audience targeting. It comes to messaging. And again, if you've got generic, I fight hard, and I've been doing this a long time, guess what? It's not going to work. It doesn't matter where you advertise that.
Yeah. It's like, you really do need to build that bank of having more attitude towards going into these things, of not, I said this earlier, but not just thinking like every single one of these mediums or approaches is like, get a lead for my specific legal issue, right? Like, a lot of the community stuff really does need to be building that goodwill and equity, right? Or affinity, rather, in terms of the way you say it. But that is a different mindset, right? If you go into everything like looking to sign people up, they're going to have a very different experience or takeaway from that. I don't know. I just think that's a key point, because I know, from my own role with like a sales hat on and some of these things, you can get very caught up in like, what do I want? What do I need? What do I want them to do with me, instead of just thinking about how can I give them a great experience?
Right. And again, my big point is that it's not an either or. It's a false dichotomy to say it's brand or performance. You should be doing both as part of a bigger game plan to hit a certain objective. And that's why, again, I always come back to the same thing, where I'm like, what percentage of your overall marketing investment, both time and money, is going to various things, is going to direct response, is going to brand building? Because oftentimes you see it's like, well, 80% of my total marketing budget is going to Google ads. And you're just like, that is a dangerous game to play, even if it's working. You might be working with an agency and it's working great, and you're like, this is great. You've got all of your eggs in that basket. And we know just the nature of the beast is that the cost per case is going to go up over time, no matter what you do.
It just doesn't seem like moving forward with that point in mind, like you're not building the moat, right? Like the moat has to be in that local stuff, that affinity, that feeling that can be combined with it. But otherwise, if it's just my ads are being run more efficiently than the next guy, I just think with AI and the proliferation of this, it's going away. It's just certainly not going to look the same, that advantage like that, other than if you have, big dollars going in. That's about it.
Well, that's what you brought up, is because the big dollar guys, they're like, I don't care about my message. I mean, they do, because even like I talk about this all the time, but like even John Morgan, like his billboards in Michigan, we are Michigan with the Michigan football team. They know that affinity matters, right?
Yeah, right.
They're doing
Right.
that because it's appealing to people that are Michigan fans, except for people like me who know what's going on here. But most people, but this is my point, and I'm glad you brought it back to the money thing, because this is my whole thing. You're not going to compete on the money.
Right. You just
Statistically
won't.
speaking.
Yeah.
It's there. Not every firm is going to be the most well-resourced firm in an area. And in fact, in most competitive markets, you're going to have a handful of them. A handful of them that are all competing against each other. They're driving the price up. Then you got the out-of-state guys coming in. You've got the private equity-backed guys coming in.
Yep.
So the price is going up for that. Super competitive. And so I always think about this. I'm like, okay, so we know this. There is a significant segment of the legal services consumers, especially in PI, but other practice areas as well, who they just make I'm going to call it a knee-jerk hiring decision. They got 2222222 in their head. They're like, when I'm in a car accident and I need cash, I'm calling 2222222. Or, I'm in a car accident, whoever the billboard that I drive by every day, that's the person I'm thinking about, and I'm going to call them. So what I think is this, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to compete on the billboard. So what do I have to do to persuade that consumer? For two things. First, maybe you're not going to focus on that consumer at all. Maybe you just accept that the segment of consumers that are going to make a hiring decision based on a billboard, we're not going to worry about that. There's plenty of other potential clients in this other segment, and we're going to double down on that affinity in that group. But even so, let's say you want to steal market share from the big players. So you got to appeal to these people that are like, I'm driving by the billboards every day. That's who I know. That's who I'm hiring. Or, and it's not, in fairness, these folks are smart. They're not just doing billboards. They're supporting it with TV. They're supporting it with radio. But their saturation across all these offline media channels, big budget. My thing is, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to compete like that. What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
What that means is, what do I have to do to persuade somebody to not blindly just instant reaction, hire the billboard lawyer? I've got to give them a reason to hire me. I've got to do something so they're like, I know this other lawyer. I've got 222 in my head, but I'm going to go call this other lawyer for this other reason. And those other reasons, that's what this is all about.
You think it's messaging? Is it because you're not going to be visible of the people with that kind of money? How do you go in with the scalpel versus the sledgehammer in that kind of way?
It's about out affinitying them. It's out localing them.
Yeah,
it's
I like
out
that. Josh Hodgins.
Yeah, it's out humaning them. That again, a blueprint for attorneys to dominate local markets by being human. That's and he lays it out, like what to do. Like he shares what worked at his firm. Super generous, super valuable. Again, he's got the mastermind community. So if you're a criminal defense lawyer, like you should check that out. But for me, and this was like kind of the impetus for this conversation, as we're coming up to a half hour, so we'll probably wrap it up here. But this is exactly what I've been thinking for our agency is, how do we support lawyers in doing this? Because again, strategically they might get it, but like, are they going to set up a multi-channel campaign for a contest in their local community with QR codes and signups, all the way back to media buys on first party and retargeting. Like, no, they need help. But that's what I want to be talking about with them. Like, those are the strategies I want to be going to being like, hey, how can we do this? How can we integrate your offline activities with digital? How can we advertise to your referral sources? How can we get more people into the bucket of people who are like, I like this lawyer more than I like the billboard that I drive by every day. And it's not free. It takes money. It takes
money, and they got to show up, right? This isn't like a just pay for it, set it and forget it back of the phone book ad. Like, that's just not what this is.
That's right. And participation is an issue, right? And we're sympathetic to that too. Maybe that's a thing we can talk about next time. Maybe we can write it down is, what are the expectations in a good, healthy partnership with a firm that's trying to do this kind of stuff? Like, what do you need to do? And, again, I can give some examples in ways that it's not as much time as you might think, but it does require participation because no one else can be you, right? Agencies can't be you. AI can't be, not yet, but it's working on it. But AI, until it is passing the Turing test on video, forget about it. You still need you to do stuff. Is AI going and showing up at the pizza place, being like, "Hey, we want to take you to the pizza shop or to dinner or whatever it is"? AI is not doing that. No. That's real world stuff, and that's the stuff that I think that being human, that's the way to stand out.
That's the last.
All right, Jeff. Well, this was a great conversation. We'll help to do more of these. We should try to get on a regular schedule. So if anybody ever does watch these, they can know when we're doing them. Currently we're scheduled to do Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Yep.
Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Central Time. Noon for you, Jeff, in Chicago.
Noon for me. 10 a.m.
And yeah.
Great talk, Guy.
I enjoyed it. Great talk.
Me too. All right.
Be well.